Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for staying to join today's Q&A session. We've enjoyed some really interesting presentations this morning. They've sparked a lot of questions, both in advance of this session, and I'm sure as we go along, we're going to have more questions coming in. I'm Michelle Charrington from Invest Northern Ireland's Food Business Development team, and I'm pleased to invite to join me on the panel Emma from Mintel, Shokafah from the Food People, Kathleen from the Food Standards Agency, and Danielle from White's Oats. Thank you, ladies, for some great presentations this morning so far. I'm going to start with a couple of easy warm-up questions. And Shokafah, I'm going to come to you first and just ask you, please, what healthy ingredient do you feel has really come to the fore so far this year?
Well, in terms of ingredients that we just see loads of at the moment, mushroom is something that's coming up again and again and again. In the last year, we saw mushroom becoming really popularized in the plant-based sphere because of its meaty texture and umami flavor profile. People really enjoyed swapping it out for things like jerky and burgers and so on. But where it's sort of come into its own this year is for its other health credentials. People are touting mushrooms a lot for their high natural content of vitamin D, which from an immunity perspective has been a buzzword this year. And because they're so rich in vitamin D naturally, we're seeing consumers really go for them even more than they already had been. What's interesting also is the types of mushrooms that are coming to the fore. You know, we obviously all know the usual suspects, chestnut, portobello, all that kind of stuff. But there's a whole new raft of what sometimes gets called magic mushrooms or adaptogenic mushrooms. These are the ones like reishi, chaga, cordyceps, lion's mane, turkey tail, and you know they're getting a lot of talk on the scene because they've got these almost verging on mythical qualities that people really enjoy them for. Fans of these think that they can help you adapt to stress as well as helping to support healthy immune function.
Thanks very much. That's really interesting. I tend to agree that I think mushrooms are really coming to the fore as a meat replacement in some of the new sort of products aimed at people trying to reduce meat and so on. Emma, can I just ask you, does that sort of chime with what you've seen? Do you find that in the produce sector in particular, there's been a lot of uptake in terms of health and wellness, or do you feel that's quite evenly spread across a number of categories?
Yes, certainly. I think the fruit and veg category has always been quite focused on health and wellness. It's always been a really strong selling point of theirs. So I am seeing a lot of development in mushrooms, as you said previously. But I think one of the big categories we're seeing sort of develop past what it typically would have been known as the better for you snacking category. It's kind of blown up in recent years. We're seeing a lot more nutritional focus placed on cereal bars and snack bars. You know, they're really trying to focus on reducing their sugar. They're trying to boost other elements that are attractive to consumers, protein, different things like that. Even fiber is becoming a really big thing that we're seeing in the better for you snacking. But across the board, we are seeing a big uptake in health and wellness in many categories. Dairy as well is another big one. They're really trying to leverage their natural good qualities, probiotics, prebiotics, that kind of thing. So yeah, I think it's a lot of categories seem to be going that direction towards health and wellness.
Thanks, Emma. And I know you mentioned in your presentation as well that for a lot of consumers, healthy eating has become more of a priority in COVID. And I suppose, Shokafah, alongside that, we're perhaps looking at people trying to take on some food that's going to help them deal with the various stressors associated with sort of modern life, and particularly life in this pandemic, in terms of perhaps emotional and some physical stress as well. You referred just in the first question to adaptogens, and maybe you could just sort of elucidate a little bit on the role of adaptogens in the market today.
Yeah, absolutely. So adaptogens become a real buzzword, but I think not very many people really know what it means. That's because there isn't really an established universal definition of it. Essentially, though, when people are talking about adaptogens, they're talking about naturally occurring plant-based ingredients that are purported to help the body, help the natural resistance to stress, whether that's physical, chemical, or biological. The way that they're supposed to do this is because they're foods or ingredients that are supposed to naturally support the adrenal system. Now, the adrenal system obviously is important for loads of bodily functions, and one of them is regulating the stress hormones. So things like our cortisol levels, you know, in the good sense, that gives us the get up and go feeling in the morning, or it helps calm us down when we're nervous. If it's out of whack, then it has huge implications for things like sleep, immunity, even weight. And so fans of these adaptogenic products think that by having more of these, there's a normalizing effect on the body. In terms of what constitute adaptogenic ingredients, again, because it's not really an established definition yet, the list kind of just grows every day, but ones that are particularly popular at the moment, I already mentioned mushrooms, things like reishi, chaga, cordyceps, and so on, but also tulsi, maca root, turmeric, dandelion, nettle, lavender, chamomile. These are all things that are purported to have some sort of adaptogenic quality. And so we're seeing them used more and more in products, often not in isolation, but where 3 or 4 of them come in together. And these are all things that are supposed to help you normalize your stress function, essentially. So when you need a lift, give you a lift, but when you need to calm down, help calm you down. One thing I will throw in, though, is that this should all be taken with quite a big pinch of salt, because as is often the case in the wellness sphere, there's still a lot more studies that need to be done about the true efficacy of all of these. And I think it's difficult in particular because they're often used all together, not all together, but in conjunction. It's hard to isolate the real impact of an individual adaptation. So a buzzword, a hot topic for the next year, but something that we need to think and read a lot more carefully about.
That's fascinating. Thank you very much. Great to see how some of those really natural ingredients are being put to work in quite a scientific way. Now, Danielle, just coming over to you at White's Oats. For a lot of us, I suppose porridge has been getting us up and keeping us going in the morning for years and years. One of the questions that's come in for you is, how have you managed to reinvent porridge, to make it into a really exciting healthy eating product?
Okay, yeah, thanks, Michelle. I suppose what's one of the wonderful things about oats is really it can be so useful as a base carrier, and that allows you to do a lot with it and to add ingredients to it. And one of the ways we did that a few years ago was to look towards functional ingredients that would really boost and enhance the overall nutritional benefits of porridge. And we did that by adding in fiber. So one of them was adding in the beta-glucan soluble fiber, which is already present in oats, but we wanted to give people the opportunity to get 100% of their beta-glucan in the morning by having just a 30-gram serving of porridge. So that was one way we did it, by introducing that, and the other way was through the introduction of soy protein. And really this was, we could see through the wellness trends that people were looking more functional enhancement. We also recognized that there were more individual, I think as some of the presentations alluded to, more individualized and personal nutrition that people were looking for. So for example, older consumers have very different needs to younger consumers. And that was one of the ways where we could start to segment our range of products to, I suppose, those lifestyle and consumer needs that were changing. So giving people that extra enhancement, whether they're looking improved heart health, improved digestion, or whether they're looking at extra protein for busy active lifestyles and for their fitness regimes. So that's what been one, I suppose, innovation in our portfolio that has allowed us to really reinvent, I suppose, the morning sort of staple bowl of porridge.
Thank you. And White's is obviously a market-leading brand in the cereal sector. And did you feel nervous at all when it came to trying to reformulate the brand?
I think when we came to reformulate, I suppose, Toasted Oats being the one in question, it really does come down to looking, as you say, not just at the products, but also looking at looking at your brand in its entirety. And for us, it was about wanting to do the right thing as a responsible brand and as a market leader of healthy oat-based cereals and porridge in Northern Ireland, we were committed to doing that right thing. It certainly wasn't without its challenges, as I alluded to in the presentation. It had a very loyal following, but also Toasted Oats was a hybrid product. So what I mean by that, in its category, it wasn't really a true, authentic crispy or crunch as some of the competitor products was. It was quite unique in its composition. And we knew that, sugar is one of those things where it doesn't just add sweetness, but it does perform other functions. And for us, it was binding the oats into that cluster, which gave it its composition and its uniqueness in the market. So we did have to be very careful that when we were taking the steps to reformulate and to reduce sugar, that we didn't fundamentally change the product and what consumers loved about it. So it was small steps that we took to mitigate that. The consumer panels were very important to make sure we were bringing consumers on that journey and getting their feedback every step of the way. And I think importantly and crucially for us when we were doing it, we also undertook research as part of that journey, and that opened up opportunities to expand our portfolio. So whilst we were nervous, we mitigated that by taking the smaller steps that would allow us to hit the amber on the traffic light labeling, which was fundamentally important in what we set out to achieve, first and foremost. But secondly, by introducing a portfolio of healthier products within our oat-based cereal range, so giving consumers that breadth of range, it allowed us then to reduce sugar even further in other products and giving consumers that choice. So it took away some of the immediate challenges that we faced with Toasted Oats by doing that. But yes, it was, we were nervous. Thankfully, the feedback overall was positive. We had a few consumer complaints, and I think one of the things I would always say, and the lessons we learned, was to bring consumers, make sure that you're communicating with consumers on the changes that you've taken and why, and being quite clear with them. And I think probably that was one of the things when we did it a number of years ago we didn't do enough of. But overall, no, it was a very good outcome for us, thankfully.
And I think, if I may say so, the strength of the Toasted Oat products lies greatly in terms of the natural flavour profile that they have. I think that the berry flavour, taste of berries, there's no nasty aftertastes, no sense that this is something that's not going to be good for you. And one of the questions that's come through is, how did you decide on those two flavours for the Toasted Oats?
I think for us, when we were looking at flavour profiles, I think when we look at flavour profiles in general, it goes back to, what does your brand stand for? Where are you positioning your brand in the market, and who's your target audience? So whilst when we were looking at flavours at the time, and since then when we've started to look at new products that we've brought in and we look at flavour profiles, it's really important that we don't tend to look at very niche ingredients. We remain true to the brand DNA. So it is about identifying those flavors that are well recognized, they're well understood, and that's that they work well. We are a mainstream brand, especially in Northern Ireland. We appeal to a broad set of consumers. So it's about pitching flavors that we believe that those consumers will have the uptake with. And then it comes to looking at, well, what flavor combinations will work, what have worked in the marketplace. So we look not just at our own category, but we look at broader categories as well in doing that, and then testing those in-house to make sure, fundamentally that they're delivering on taste. But for us, it's going back to, where are you pitching your brand and who's your target consumer, and making sure that we're not a very, we wouldn't class ourselves as a high price premium brand to elevate ingredients that are quite niche. It is about those everyday sort of core ingredients that people recognize, and they're just flavor combinations that tend to work well.
So when a company then comes to reformulate their products and take into consideration all these various factors, it's a very complicated process. And Kathleen, if I could just come over to you now and ask what support and tools would be available from the FSA to help companies to reformulate products and develop new healthy products?
Okay, thank you for that question. As I mentioned in the presentation, the Food Standards Agency in Northern Ireland developed the Eating Well, Choosing Better programme in 2017. And the aim of this programme is to support small and medium-sized food businesses to reformulate products to reduce calories, sugar, saturated fat and salt. And since that time, we've worked with our stakeholders, including the food industry, InvestNI, our local academic institutions, and the Northern Ireland District Councils on a range of projects to support the industry with reformulation. So some of these projects included the workshops that we hosted in collaboration with the ice cream and the bakery sector, and at one of these most recent workshops we launched the scone reformulation guidance, and this guidance actually picks up on a lot of the things that Danielle has just mentioned, because this guidance provides advice to the bakery sector on how to produce scones that meet the UK government's sugar, salt and calorie reduction targets. But a very important consideration for us when developing this guidance was actually thinking about the challenges that businesses have to overcome in undertaking reformulations, for example, such as meeting taste, and thinking about the unique flavours that businesses can use to develop healthier products. And this is where working with our stakeholders, our local academic institutions, was really, really important. And our food technologists actually use the advice in this guidance in a project the Food Standards Agency initiated with the bakery sector to reformulate bakery products. And our food technologist was successfully able to achieve reductions in sugar up to 45% in pancakes and 42% in scones. Now, unfortunately, the project had to stop a little bit earlier than planned due to COVID-19, but we learned a lot of valuable lessons from taking part in that project, and these are lessons that we can apply at a later stage to focus on reducing other nutrients known to be detrimental to health, such as saturated fat and salt. And we've also very recently published our cheesecake nutritional analysis report, and because of the findings in this report, some of the more concerning being that the average slice of cheesecake contains over 1/4 of the average recommended daily calorie intake, and that the equivalent of 7 cubes of sugar. We are going to work with the food industry, including manufacturers of puddings, to develop technical guidance to help food businesses produce healthier cheesecake. We've also developed healthy catering guidelines, and I was really pleased to say today in some of the presentations that portion size has been mentioned as something that's becoming much more important to consumers, because the healthy catering guidelines that we develop for a range of different types of food businesses provides not only lots of practical examples on how to reduce sugar, saturated salt and calories, but also lots of practical tips on how to make smaller portion size appealing to consumers. So we will be working with the Northern Ireland District Councils to disseminate the healthy catering guidelines over the next few months. This guidance was developed very much to complement our calorie-wise scheme that we also deliver with the Northern Ireland District Councils. And this is a voluntary scheme that supports the food industry to put calorie labelling on menus, and this scheme has been is delivered with our district councils because we recognise that consumers can find it difficult to make informed, healthier decisions when eating outside the home. So this scheme is very much to encourage food businesses to put calories on menus and to help consumers make informed, healthier choices.
Thank you very much. That's really comprehensive. I don't think any of us are going to look at scones and cheesecake in the same again after hearing some of those statistics. Kathleen, I wonder if I could just hit you with one of the live questions that's come in. There's a lady who's about to start a business specialising in making bone broth with mushroom and turmeric ingredients. She's finding it quite hard to find some academic papers which might help her back up some of her health claims. Could you recommend any sources of good academic research that businesses could use when it comes to reformulation?
There is actually a really interesting set of papers that was recently published on the topic of reformulation, and if the lady who has provided me that question would like to contact me at kathleen.mooney@food.gov.uk, I would be very happy to pass those papers on to her. I would also advise her to get in touch with her local regional college, because the local regional colleges have lots of expertise, who have the specialist skills and knowledge to help that lady with that query, and they'd be a really great source of help.
Fantastic, thank you very much. That's a good answer to that one. I'd like to come back to Shokita now with the next question. So there's been a raft of immune boosting products hitting the market this year. Firstly, do you feel this is a trend that we'll see continuing? And if so, what sort of products do you think will lead the trend towards immune boosting?
Yeah, so I mean, all of us will have seen the sheer volume of immune boosting things hitting shelves in the last few months, and it will continue to do so. One thing that we try and flag whenever this conversation comes up is to really think about the phrase immune boosting. There is no magic bullet or a secret ingredient that will just magically boost your immune system, so to speak. And in fact, having an overactive immune system is really dangerous and can lead to things like allergy issues or autoimmune disorders. So when this topic comes up, we try and talk more in terms of immune support or healthy functioning of the immune system. And certainly we think that we'll see lots more products coming to the fore that are supposed to help with that, in terms of specific vitamins and ingredients that are going to come up again and again. There's the obvious vitamin C, vitamin D, vitamin B12. Additionally, magnesium and zinc, often in conjunction with these. In terms of the types of products, they show up in a lot of functional drinks still hitting the market, but that's sort of just skimming the surface. Increasingly people are getting creative about what kind of products they boost these things with. So we're seeing everything from ice cream to breakfast cereal boosted with these ingredients that are supposed to help with healthy immune function. The other thing, in terms of superfoods that come up again and again at the moment, elderberry is very popular, also acerola cherry, things that are supposed to be very naturally rich in antioxidants and vitamin content that again is supposed to support immune function. And lastly, but definitely not least, I think consumers are getting better and better versed about taking a holistic view of health when it comes to immunity. And so we're seeing lots of products that are actually gut friendly, for instance, start to explain that a healthy gut is also really important for a healthy body generally and immunity, and in that sense they too can be immune boosting. And so a lot more conversation in general about how different foods can help immune function and how to rethink what you think those foods might be.
Great. And Kathleen, I'm going to just come back to you again and ask, if a company wants to make a specific health claim on a product, for example, that it's a source of a certain vitamin or mineral, what kind of backup data should they look to present to support that?
Thank you to the person who submitted that question. Now, that area does fall outside my remit, so I have spoken to my colleagues in the standards team, and there is guidance that is available to help food businesses making health claims. And again, if that individual would be happy to contact me at kathleen.mooney@food.gov.uk. I would be more than happy to pass the guidance on to the delegate. Also, just to make the delegate aware that they can source advice from their local environmental health officer, and my colleagues in the standards team would also be happy to provide additional support if needed.
That's great, thank you. And I'm also going to field a question from the live feed into you, Kathleen, and if you don't have the answer, I'm sure that the lady will be happy for you to come back to her. So this is from Tricia McNeely at Otsubury. Tricia, as I'm sure many of you will know, is a real innovator in the food sector and has been very busy in this health and wellness sector. And she's asking, if chaga mushroom is a food supplement, how can it be incorporated as an ingredient into other mainstream products?
Okay, so I think that probably is something that would be best placed answered by my colleagues in the standards team, but certainly I will take a note of that question and we'll get back to her with an answer as soon as we can.
Appreciate that. Thank you. Quite a specific question. So Emma, I'm going to come back to you and ask you, obviously plant-based products are on the rise. Would you have any idea how this market's expected to grow in Northern Ireland over the next few years?
Yeah, the plant-based market is continuing to evolve. We've been watching it over sort of the last number of years. And our evidence shows that it's only continuing to boost and continuing to grow. We have a global new products database, so it collects around 1,200 new products across the globe in about 86 countries. So it helps analyze the types of products that are being launched and claims, and that's where vegan claims come in. Because between 2017 and 2019, in the UK and Ireland alone, we saw the number of products launched double. There's about 1,500 products we collected in 2017 that have a vegan claim on them, and that was just in food and drink. And it's actually around 3,000 now that we've collected in 19. Now, of course, that's just a sample of the types of products that have been out there. We're seeing massive boosts right across the board. And what's really interesting is that it's actually evolving. I think the plant-based movement and plant-based foods in general are very much focused on health and the environment. Those are their two key pillars of positioning themselves. But now we're starting to see more indulgence vegan products come in to kind of entice the non-vegans over towards the plant-based products, because in Northern Ireland, there's only really around 2% on average population that are actually vegan, and of course it's very much done by younger consumers as well. But there's still a growing interest in plant-based foods, and consumers want to sample out different products. They want to reduce their the bad energy they put out in terms of like eating more healthier foods and also more sustainable foods as well. So we're starting to see different brands come out with more indulgence categories. A big thing we've been watching lately is your cheat meal or dirty vegan meals, which I've seen quite a lot come out. A brand that was really interesting was one called Squeaky Bean. They're in the UK based, but they're also here too. But they started doing things such as chicken nuggets and different products like that weren't really so focused on health. They were more focused on that kind of indulgence and that kind of treat yourself and have a bit more fun with vegan food and plant-based as well. So I definitely think it's going to continue to grow. Our evidence for 2020 is already showing that there's a lot more going on there and a lot more new product development coming out. In terms of actual NI companies, I think Thelma might be a better place to answer that.
Yeah, we'll hand that over to Thelma. Thelma, great to see so many of our local companies really engaging with this growth in plant-based. Are there any examples that spring to mind for you?
Yes, it's really fantastic, Michelle. We have a very strong produce, cereals and grains sector in Northern Ireland, which is around worth around 200 million per annum to the Northern Ireland economy and employs around 2,000 people in this sector. Some of our largest fresh produce companies would be familiar names like Gilfresh, Willowbrook, Glens of Antrim, Wilson's Country, Hughes Mushrooms, Mash Direct, UMI Foods. And then some of the largest cereals and grains companies would be Linwoods, Forest Feast and White Oats. There's a lot of innovation in the sector and a lot of opportunity, given the health and wellness agenda that we're all talking about here this week.
Great, thank you. And Emma, just popping back to you, what do you feel, what sort of benefits are consumers looking for in healthy products?
Well, I think the main things that consumers look at, and it's something that Danielle with Kathleen both touched on, was kind of the traffic light system. I think the green, amber, and red indicators for salt, sugar, and fat. I think those are still remain very much the key drivers that consumers look for in a healthy product. So I think if it's too high in sugar, a lot of consumers are very much turned off that. So we're seeing a lot of reformulation happen, and trying to level out those indicators to give you the nice green traffic light. So, but I also think that for other categories, they're focusing more on things like protein, or they're looking more at boosting fiber content, like what Danielle was talking about. So in terms of like healthy product, I think for the most part, people still look at that sugar. Obviously sugar is the big one, but salt and fat, followed by the calories as well, just to kind of gauge how healthy a product really is and what they should be looking for.
Thanks, Emma. And how do you feel that sustainability sits alongside healthy eating? Obviously, we're seeing a real movement, not just amongst consumers, but amongst retailers at the top of the market, really trying to reduce plastic reduction and emphasize the sort of environmentally friendly attributes of the products they sell. And do you think that's a movement that's going to continue its momentum, even in spite of the pandemic?
Definitely, yeah. I think the sustainability movement has really submerged itself in so many categories, not just food and drink, but all the way down to clothing. We're seeing it in transport. We're even seeing it in tourism to a certain extent. We're seeing a lot of this ethical mindfulness when it comes to the types of products we purchase, types of products we consume. And this is kind of filtering its way into healthy lifestyles as well, and dietary choices. Especially among young consumers. The Generation Z are kind of the big ones pushing this trend for sustainability. We actually did a cheese report recently in May time, and we found that around 44% of 16 to 24-year-olds in Ireland weren't eating cheese for environmental reasons. So it's quite significant to find this large portion of consumers of 16 to 24-year-olds weren't doing it, not just for health, but for specifically because of the environment. So I think as we kind of go more along this lines of what means to be sustainable, consumers are starting to look at, well, is this product even good for me? If it's not good for the environment, do I really want to be part of sort of perpetuating this killing of the environment, basically? So we're seeing a lot of consumers start to associate, and again, it's that total holistic approach, that total well-being type trend that we discussed earlier on this morning in the presentation. As consumers want to feel good for what they eat, but they also want to make sure that, you know, they're helping the environment, they're helping the world, and they want to see things better than what we're currently living in. So I definitely think the sustainability movement will continue to shape what people eat going forwards and what they look for in healthy products.
Thank you. And Shokofa, in the Food People presentation, one of the things you mentioned was that people were looking for health hacks. And gut health has emerged as one of the most important hacks. I was interested to hear that 70% of the body's immune system is found in the gut. How do you think this trend for gut health will continue to evolve?
I mean, gut health has been such a hot topic for the last year or two. I think a lot of what's been driving it though to date is digestion and increased understanding around intolerances and IBS and things like that, for instance. What we're seeing happen more and more is discussion around, as you say, the link between the gut and the rest of the body, and why a happy gut means like good health in general. So yeah, 70% of the body's immune cells are said to be in the gut. Also around 90% of the body's serotonin, which is the happy chemical. And that is all part of the wider conversation around what sometimes gets called the gut-brain axis. So basically that the mind, that mental health and gut health are inextricably linked because of how much interaction there is between the two. So I think that gut health will continue to be a hugely important conversation, but not just in the context of the gut and digestion, but the impact it has on the wider body. And in that sense, you know, we'll keep seeing products boosted with things like fiber and pro and prebiotics, but also a lot more conversation around foods that help good gut function in general and maintain a good environment in your gut for everything to work well. And that's not just, you know, superfoods and boosted products, but also good balanced diet in general, and making sure you get enough things like fiber through day-to-day nutrition.
Thank you very much. And Kathleen, a live question coming through. If a company would like to refer to a product as being immune boosting or a superfood, is there any legal guidance on how they go about this? And if so, where might that be found?
Yeah, so I think, Michelle, this again would be a question that would be best answered by my colleagues on the standards team, because that falls under their policy area. So again, if that individual who submitted the question would like to contact me via email, I would be more than happy to make sure that they get a response.
Great, thank you very much. Emma, I'm just going to come back to you and ask, do you feel that there is a market at the moment for healthy coffee alternatives that might fall into the category of calming beverages? Once we've been picked up, how can we wind ourselves down again in a healthy way?
That's an interesting question. I've been seeing a lot of this happening in the US more so than kind of here. I think with CBD and stuff like that there, that's helping to level people out and bring them down a little bit when it comes to coffee. The short answer is yes, I definitely think there is a market for it. We've already seen some new product development in it, and I think the thing about coffee drinkers are, you know, you drink coffee to energize yourself, to perk yourself up, but I think with growing anxiety right now, especially around the pandemic, people maybe don't want the jitters that come along with the coffee. I think that's where we're starting to see more interest in it, especially among younger consumers as well. I think in the US we had around almost 4 in 10 younger consumers, coffee drinkers, that said they wanted coffee that would actually relax them rather than high caffeinate them, and it was quite significant to see that. Again, the younger consumers were looking for more calming benefits, something to keep them up but also calm them down a little bit. But we've seen new product development even in the UK. I think it's Taylor's Coffee, they launched one in 2019. It's called like Lazy Sunday Afternoon or something. Again, it's to kind of feed back into that relax, chill out, enjoy some time with coffee, but it doesn't have to be all go. So I think we will definitely see more of these calming claims in coffee beverages going forward, and they're ready to drink beverages as well.
That is brilliant. Thank you all very much for those contributions. We've got through a lot of questions. I think some of the key messages that I can see coming through are that as time goes on, health and wellbeing is going to continue to be both a challenge and a big opportunity for our food and drink suppliers. And by the sounds of it, consumers are looking to get more and more positive benefits from the food and drink that they consume. And so we'll be seeing food as a contributor, not just to our physical well-being, but also to our emotional well-being. I think as we see this category mature and develop, it will be not just about healthy, virtuous food, but food that can be indulgent as well as healthy and a really pleasurable experience. Thank you all again for your contributions. I have a feeling that we could continue this conversation for a very long time, but we'll close it for now and hopefully pick up on more of these questions in tomorrow's sessions. Thanks very much, everybody.